Hello, this is Mensaflow with another tutorial. This one is on n8n and Mensaflow. Now, n8n is a product that's available, it's open source, but what we've done is we've packaged it into the Mensaflow solution, so it resides on the server, and it resides behind the security mechanism. You can still access it from the outside world through Mensaflow APIs, but it's actually integrated into the Mensaflow solution, so you can have those workflows be done alongside with the Mensaflow AI and LLM services that we provide. So that's quite interesting of that integration. So now we've had other n8n workflows that we've shown already in prompt. I think that's in the tutorials of the prompt accelerators, email automation, and the API. So you can see examples of the n8n in action there, but we thought we'd do a separate video just to kind of highlight some extra things that n8n can do and that we've integrated into the Mensaflow platform. So the first example I have here, we've already shown this. I'm not going to go through it again in terms of the execution, but I just wanted to show you the actual workflow behind it was in the prompt accelerators. In that particular example, we wrote the jobs database for specific jobs off the chat box into a database item, and here what we're doing is we're querying it and then adding to that specific job and then sending an email. So what we did, if you recall, we created a offer for I think it was Quality Motors, and then we're querying that, getting the data, and then adding to it to upsell the particular client when they were asking for a specific offer, a quote on a car repair. So here you can see that we kick this off with a 30-second cron. We read the database, we set up the queries, we through the API queues of Mensaflow, we get the job data, do some filtering, and then if we can get an email message, it's correct, it's kind of a double check here, and then we actually query the LLM here to add to the quote further sales opportunities, merge it, clean the data, and send the email. And you can see that in action in the prompt accelerator video, so that's quite interesting there. We won't go into each of these nodes, but it's pretty basic n8n. At the end of the video, we'll have an n8n cheat sheet to go into the details of that. We've already shown some of that already, but I just want to kind of point this out. We wanted to highlight another n8n workflow here that probably will be useful for more advanced users doing heavy-duty LLM querying for specific items that they're looking for. This particular workflow basically re-transcribes a long video, and it takes a long time and provides inferences who actually did the speaking. If you notice in the transcriptions, it gives you the transcription of the video, but you don't know who's saying what. And so the task here is to, through AI inferences, who said what when. So this is what's kind of interesting about this workflow. It doesn't do that naturally, and it does the inference by the names being used in the conversation going on. So this particular workflow has from the specific application, we'll show this in a minute, gets the video ID, and we set a database, then we merge it, and then we respond to the webhook. So what this does is setting up a worker process. Most HTTP posts, you have about 100 seconds. You can't just sit there and hang on a fetch, for example, for minutes, because if it's a long video, it could take several minutes to process these particular items, and as well as you're going to have to chunk it. So you have to build chunks and then try to do the transcription and identifying of the speaker on a chunk basis, because you can't feed all those data into the LLM because it's too big, because it's a big video. So I think the video is like an hour long, so you can't do all that. So basically what we do is we kick off the process. So this is a way when we write a database. Now we use a MySQL database. If you have an enterprise server, we have access to a worker table. If you don't have that, you can use a Google Docs or something like that, so it doesn't have to be MySQL. So there's different options there in terms of data storage. But you can see here, the webhook in, the webhook out, and you just basically launch the process and track it in the database. Do the YouTube transcription, kind of massage the data, and then you go into a loop and we chunk it, prepare, we do a grok request, and then we put a status. The status worker here provides the status so that you can have a progress bar as it's going through the transcription, merge it back in, process again, and loop to the next chunk, and then it goes through different chunking aspect. Once it's all done, kind of format it, say that you're done. Your application will do a polling, and it will poll this database to see what's done, as well as provide status here. So you can do a status check. The status worker gives you a percentage, and that's how it gets where it's at in the process. So basically creating a background process, which is quite interesting. Now we're not going to go into each one of these nodes, but you can kind of see the flow here, which could be very interesting. Say if you're doing some scientific analysis and it takes multiple LLM calls to process the data, and you can't just sit on a webhook for hours, right? It may even be an hour processing if you're processing huge amounts of data. So this is what's interesting here. But what we can do is show an example of this. Here's the YouTube we're going to transcribe here, and we kick off this process. And you can also put in a stop here because it'll write the database and it checks for that status in the workflow to stop it. And then you can download the CSV file of it. So let's kick it off and see where it goes. I'm going to speed the video up here because obviously this is going to take about 5 minutes to churn through an hour's worth of LLM processing. Okay, it's finished here. You can see that took a total of 4 minutes and 25 seconds to do all that. Obviously, this is why you have to have a background worker, and it basically gives you some information about the number of words, the number of characters that were spoken. Of course, that's all done by the AI, and what you're seeing here is it's giving you the name of the person when they spoke, something that you don't get in a normal transcription. And of course, the LLM figured all that out, which is quite useful if you're doing a transcription of a meeting or something. So it gives you an idea of what you can do in terms of a large workflow process that takes a long time to process. There may be other things where you need this mechanism. So it gives you a little bit of an overview of how we're using n8n inside of the Mensaflow solution. Again, go back to those other videos, the prompt accelerator video, the email automation, and the APIs. Get more, see the n8n in action, as well as you saw here. So this is be a useful point for your particular implementation. Here's that n8n cheat sheet. Take a look at the description box. You can download this from our website. It's kind of a nice cheat sheet to have handy when you're doing your coding on the workflows in the background on n8n. Hope you found that useful. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video on your way out.